Good morning and welcome to the New York City Council hearing of the Committees on Criminal Justice, jointly with Oversight and Investigation. At this time, can everyone please silence your cell phones? If you wish to testify, you can submit your testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov. Again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your cooperation. Chairs, we are ready to begin.
Good morning. I'm Councilmember Carlina Rivera, Chair of the... I just want to make sure we're all set to go, right? We're all set to go, right? Okay, sorry. Let's start that over. Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Carlina Rivera. I'm Chair of the Council's Committee on Criminal Justice. I'd like to welcome everyone here today and those joining us remotely to discuss the Department of Corrections' transportation of detained individuals to court. Ensuring people in custody are brought to their court appearances safely and on time is at the intersection of many fundamental issues that I've focused on as chair of the Criminal Justice Committee. At Rikers Island right now, there are over 5,000 people who have been separated from their families and their communities and placed in dangerous and even deadly conditions because detention on the island has been deemed necessary for them to ensure they attend court proceedings. Each one of these people is presumed innocent and has the right to participate in their own defense. But far too many of these incarcerated individuals are not making it to their scheduled court appearances, a violation of their rights that can have devastating and far-reaching consequences. Today's hearing comes as the latest Federal Monitor report reveals violent, life-altering incidents the last 2 weeks at Rikers. But we all know the history on the island and in the system itself. After our preliminary investigation into this issue, done in coordination with Chair Brewer and the Oversight and Investigations Committee, there is reason to believe that individuals in custody are about as likely to attend court as criminal defendants who are released pending trial. This is simply unacceptable. Even short stays on Rikers have life-changing consequences. Missed court dates drag out the legal process. According to data compiled by the Nunez Monitor, pretrial detainees generally spend close to 4 months at Rikers Island, a rate 4 times the national average. 87% of those incarcerated on Rikers are there pre-trial. Nearly a quarter of the individuals at Rikers have been in custody for over a year, and you'll hear about hundreds of individuals who have been there over 2 years. Rikers Island is located in the middle of the East River. To attend court, people in DOC custody are often woken up between 4 and 5 a.m. to be searched and loaded onto buses for the trip to the courthouse in the borough where their alleged offense occurred. On this day, they forego visits, programming, phone calls, and other basic human needs to sit in a pen with other justifiably frustrated individuals for hours, awaiting their court appearance, only to endure the same long and arduous journey in reverse at the end of the day. Undoubtedly, some people refuse to attend court appearances, and we must acknowledge this issue and acknowledge that it is related also to the conditions of the city's jail system. We must ensure that we close Rikers by 2027 and transition to a system that is more humane with people and services located near courthouses, significantly reducing the time and resources needed to ferry individuals to and from the courts, lowering transportation costs, improving court production rates, and easing the impact on people in custody and DOC staff. In our work, we have repeatedly heard from criminal defense attorneys that despite being told their clients refused to go to court, their clients later say they were never offered a ride. A recent survey conducted by the New York County Defender Services indicates that 58% of attorney respondents stated that on at least one occasion in the past 2 months, their client disputed the DOC claim that they refused production for a court appearance. The department will say that all refusals are captured on video. This may be true, but given that the Board of Correction has had its access to video content restricted, They are inhibited to conduct oversight on whether these videos exist and whether these refusals are legitimate. Today, we are hearing legislation I've introduced alongside Chair Brewer to codify the requirement that DOC record all interactions where a person in custody refuses to attend a court appearance. Our bill also requires the commissioner to appoint a court production liaison who would ensure defense attorneys receive access to the refusal videos, establish a system to resolve complaints, and make recommendations for improving court production processes. To monitor DOC's progress, the bill includes a monthly report on court production rates, including alleged refusals. Today's hearing will cover the City Council's Oversight and Investigations Division fieldwork, data issues and concerns, information gaps, discrepancies between data, and more. The situation on Rikers Island is grave, and the pace of change at Rikers has been unacceptably slow. The current state of affairs remains deeply troubling. I look forward to today's hearing and continuing the work in coalition to create a more just and humane criminal legal system. And with that, I will turn it over to Chair Brewer.
Thank you, Chair Rivera. I am Gail Brewer, Chair of the Council's Oversight and Investigations Committee. I want to thank all of our witnesses and members of the public for attending today, as you know, in person and remotely. And I want to thank the Department of Correction, because I know that some of our staff from investigations went to witness and to get information about the transportation. And I want to thank DOC for working with them to effectuate that. I also want to thank Councilmember Ayala for being here. Department of Corrections challenges maintaining a functional environment on Rikers Island have been widely known for decades now. And as a former Manhattan Borough President, I'm quite familiar with them because I did sign off in a borough-based system. But what this hearing will show is that questions remain about whether the department is fulfilling a core function of our legal system, getting defendants to court on time so they have a fair and speedy trial. Data reviewed by council staff, conversations with defense attorneys, and site visits, as I indicated earlier, by our Oversight and Investigation Division suggest reason to doubt Commissioner Molina's testimony earlier this year that the Department of Correction is meeting this most basic obligation. In testimony, the commissioner said trouble with getting defendants to court was largely the fault of the defendants themselves, whom he claimed refused to attend their appearances in greater numbers than in the past. But when our investigators visited Rikers earlier this month, they witnessed a refusal that wasn't videotaped as required. Correction staff didn't fully explain the reasons for the defendant's refusal on their form, beyond noting that it was religious in nature, nor was there any apparent effort to make sure a rescheduled appearance wouldn't run into the same problem again. We definitely need a better explanation for why refusals have risen, and whether every failure to produce a defendant for court is indeed the result of refusals as claimed, because attorneys for the defendants often have other reasons. Defense attorneys tell us that DOC frequently fails to bring their clients to court while chalking these absences up to refusals. But the attorneys have an enormously difficult time accessing proof that their clients refuse to come to court. They also have evidence that what DOC staff claim are refusals to appear may be more like mistakes on their part. We don't know. Also, the process of getting defendants to court seems to be a disincentive in itself to appearing. Our team found that buses often make their way from Rikers to court at a snail's pace. That might be traffic, but might be other things. And they sit behind one another at building entrances and exits. That was particularly true in Queens. There's a shortage of drivers, and defendants spend more time in uncomfortable restraints and in holding pens when they have to go to court. It's difficult to get a handle on just how hard it has become for the Department of Correction to get defendants to court, because different agencies have different statistics documenting how many people in DOC custody actually make their appearances each month. Commissioner Molina has cited DOC's own figures, maintaining that the agency successfully produces more than 90% of defendants. But our own review showed DOC only got more than 90% of defendants to court buildings in a handful of months over the past year. That's very different than being in the courtroom. At the same time, the state's Office of Court Administration, OCA, had its own set of figures tracking how many people in Rikers actually make their court dates. And OCA's numbers paint a starkly less functional picture than the Department of Correction. We need the data. In some months, the two entities accounting for what portion of defendants made their appearances could be as far as 20 percentage points apart. This discrepancy must be explained and the wide variance from month to month remedied. Transportation to court is clearly an important bottleneck in the overall criminal justice process. Our obligation to close Rikers by 2027 compels us to ask why so many defendants are failing to make the essential journey from jail to court. The lack of transparency into the process and conflicting accounts of how many defendants actually make their court dates inhibits the city's ability to run the jails properly, contributing to rising numbers of inmates at a time when Rikers is supposed to be shrinking. Detainees, not inmates. These delays not only hold defendants in difficult jail conditions, they are a disservice to both defendants and victims of crime who must wait years for justice in court. And I say all of this because I feel strongly that we need to have the data. As somebody who authored the Open Data Bill, data is what can drive information and drive transparency. Thank you very much. Now we're going to have the wonderful attorney swear in the city.
Thank you, Chair Brewer. With us today from the Department of Correction, we have Paul Scheckman, General Counsel. Mr. Scheckman, if you can please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and respond honestly to council member questions? You may begin your testimony.
I can begin my testimony again. Can you hear me? Good morning. Good morning, Chairs Rivera and Brewer and members of the Committee on Criminal Justice and Committee on Oversight and Investigation. As was said, I'm Paul Scheckman, General Counsel for the New York City Department of Correction. I'm here today to discuss the department's transportation of individuals to court, what is often called court production, and I will keep my prepared remarks short. The department and the Office of Court Administration coordinate closely to ensure that all individuals in the department's custody who are scheduled for a court appearance appear for it. Each day, the department receives a list of scheduled court appearances from OCA, which is used to create a manifest for court production the next morning. Individuals scheduled to appear in court are awakened at 5 a.m., are provided a meal, escorted to a search area, and then taken to the intake area and to their assigned vehicle. Once they arrive at the court facility, individuals are transferred to OCA custody to be escorted to court parts. We were pleased that two members of Chair Brewer's staff, Kevin Frick and Zachary Mayer, joined us on May 12, 2023 at 5:30 a.m. to observe court production from beginning to end. They asked meaningful questions, followed a bus to court, and saw the process through. With this as background, the good news is that court production has improved significantly. Until recently, it has not been the department's strong suit, but that is no longer the case. This month, as the chart below, the chart in my testimony shows, the department has produced 96% of individuals to their required court appearances. And the testimony has a chart. You'll see there were 6,293 scheduled court appointments. That's the information we get from OCA. That's roughly 350 a day. That number can be as high as 600 on some days. The total produced was 6,050. That is 96.1%. My testimony also shows the reasons for the other 3.9%. 146 of them were court refusals, and the others are much smaller categories that total to the 3.9%. Let me state what's obvious. We are committed to maintaining that number and improving on it to the extent possible. Getting individuals from jail to court is a core function of the Department of Correction. As Commissioner Molino testified at the May 19th, 2023 executive budget hearing, reporting on the department's success is not always fashionable. But thanks to the leadership of Warden Joseph Caputo, who sits behind me, and others, court production is now an area where we are doing much, much better. I thank you for the opportunity to testify today and look forward to answering your questions.
We've been joined by Councilmember Carr.
Thank you so much for your brief testimony.
Thank you.
We call it concise, but we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so again, thank you for describing a little bit of what it's like in your coordination with OCA. In previous testimony before this committee, Commissioner Molina projected the jail population will be over 7,000 people by fall 2024. However, the jail population has been relatively flat, around 6,000 people throughout 2023, and clearly we're working to reduce that population. Has DOC updated its projections? What information do you use to inform your jail population projections? And do you believe that DOC's ability to produce people to court impacts the jail population?
Chair Rivera, I'm not sure I understand the last part of that question.
Do you believe that DOC's ability to produce people to court impacts the jail population?
I don't. I've seen the projections. I'm not a statistician, and I don't know their basis. What you say is correct. That number, for at least this year, has hovered around 6,000. It's, I think it's like 6,050 at the moment. People say that bail reform may result in increase. I don't know enough to say that. I know the bill, but I don't know people's predictions based on it. The most important part of your question is the last one, which is, or last part, which is, does it, our transportation affect population? And I would say, I said no to that, and the reason I said that is because of the current numbers and what we're doing. I will say this, as you said in your testimony, we have people on Rikers Island for a year, and some of them there for 2 years. That is not a transportation problem. That is not a DOC problem. That is a court system that processes these cases, in my view, too slowly. None of these cases are that complicated. You're talking to a former federal prosecutor, former defense attorney. These are not RICO cases.
I understand.
And the fact that we have people there for 2 years does increase our population and is something that needs to be addressed.
Right, so I just wanted to be clear about that because you said no at first, but I think we could all say that processing cases quickly is absolutely critical to the population. Court production absolutely impacts the jail population. Missed court date leads to delays in cases. It leaves people to languish on the island. If they miss a court date, they can be there additional weeks or months at a time. Is that not true?
I'm not sure, particularly now, it's a court production problem. I do think it's a court problem, and I do think it needs to be addressed. We process cases too slowly, and as a result, people are on Rikers Island for too long. And if one is going to bring population down, which I know is critical to you, one of the steps has to be advancing those cases in the courtroom more speedily.
Drilling down into the numbers a bit, between January and March of this year, the most recent 3 months that your office provided statistics, the DOC court production rate was 85%. By comparison, according to Criminal Justice Agency, in 2019, 84% of people with a criminal case who were not detained at Rikers pretrial attended all of their court appearances. You'd agree that pre-trial detention's primary purpose is ensuring individuals attend court, correct?
I agree that it is essential, if you're a pretrial detainee, that you attend court proceedings.
So then, all things being equal, if individuals attend court appearances at approximately the same rate when permitted to remain in their communities versus when detained at Rikers, would you agree that our jail system is failing to achieve one of its core functions?
You'll be surprised that I don't agree, and let me tell you why. I've looked at the statistics, and Chair Brewer asked for them, and here's what one learns, that beginning in November of 2020, and I apologize for the length of this answer, but I think it's important. Beginning in 2022, in November of 2022, one saw a spike in refusals. So refusal numbers that were at 20 a month or 98 a month in September and October jumped to 467, 638, 873, 871, and in March, 1,176. So we had an 87% production rate in March and 1,176 refusals. That number is now down to 146, which is why we are at a 96.1% production rate. I'm happy to tell I'm happy to tell you why it's been reduced so dramatically, but 1,176 refusals, in my view, right, is a recipe for delay, and I, for one, was not allowed to continue.
Well, I will just say that we have your numbers here, and the number that continuously is mentioned is a 96%. I mean, that was one good month. At best, a couple of good months. At best, a couple of good months. I have your numbers right here in your very short testimony. So I appreciate that. I just want to, the refusals right now are unverifiable, which is why we have the piece of legislation in front of us sponsored by Chair Brewer and myself.
The refusals are not unverifiable. They are videos of each of them, and we could provide all 146 to the council. They're not. And if you want to know why that number has
We
dropped,
have heard from criminal defense attorneys for years that despite being told their clients refused to go to court, the clients would later say they were never provided an escort or transportation to court. And you heard this in my testimony that New York County defenders said 58% of their attorneys said that in the past 2 years, one of their clients disputed the DOC claim that they refused production. That's 58% of their attorneys saying that that has happened. So do you believe your staff ever misclassifies information on these forms as refusals rather than another production issue?
what I know, and I know with confidence, is that number is now 146. And if you ask me to explain why it has dropped so dramatically from 1,176, right, which was an epidemic of refusals, to 146, and why I am confident that it will remain low, I'm happy to do it.
In terms of the videos, who gets the videos? Because recently there was restrictions placed on access to the Board of Correction.
No, the Board of Corrections can access all of them. The restrictions have really been on where they can review it, not if they can review it. If they were to say today, give us the 146 refusals, they would have it by the end of the week, maybe even tomorrow. I've looked at them, right? And they are available to defense counsel by subpoena at the moment. I think a better practice is, I don't know why we need subpoenas for defense counsels. If they ask for it, they should get it, and I'm happy to change the procedure so they can.
That's great to hear. We're going to hear from the Board of Correction about their access later on in the hearing. Commissioner Molina testified that in addition to filling out the undelivered defendant notification form, all alleged refusals to attend a court appearance are recorded on video. So does the department currently have enough body-worn or handheld cameras to ensure that all alleged refusals are being recorded? And after a video of an alleged refusal is captured by department staff, where is it stored?
Yes, we have enough video. If you ask me what drive it's stored on, I'm sad to say you're asking the wrong person. But they're available. I've asked to see some of them, and they've been made readily available to me. I know if anybody subpoenas them, they're readily available. If you want, I can find out what drive they're on, but they're available.
I mean, I don't think I'm going to have access to your M drive, but it's clear that to archive the videos, that's a legal mandate. So in what circumstances will the department grant access to view video of an alleged refusal?
Defense counsel asks for it, they will get it. Court asks for it, they always get it as well. Prosecutors rarely ask for it, but if they do, they get it. As I say, for prosecutors and defense counsel, the current practice is a subpoena. I don't think it's necessary. They should have access to it.
Does the department ever audit these videos to ensure that incarcerated individuals are actually refusing to attend court appearances?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know whether our auditors look at them and how often they do. I can tell you I've looked at, I would say about 15, and they are refusals. They were refusals. As I say, our practice has changed, and changed because that number hit 1,176.
Do you support the bill that's introduced today?
I've been told that supporting or opposing is beyond my pay grade. But let me say this about it.
Have you read it? Because you're going to say something about it. I just want to make sure you read it.
You would be surprised, but I thought if I was going to testify, I should read it. And I did, carefully, and I read it both Saturday and again this morning. While I don't want to take a position on it because it's not my job, I will say this. I don't think it's necessary, given the current state of affairs. That's one. I do see some problems in it. I mean, look, council can pass an unnecessary bill. I don't, if it were me, I would say 96% is pretty good. Let's wait and see if that's aberrant or if that's what's going on. Because if that's what's going on, then you don't have very many refusals at all. My concerns about the bill are, one, it has the phrase that people, we should report on people reporting, quote, to their, I think it is the time of their scheduled court appearance. And for most of these cases, other than the trial cases, there's not a time of a scheduled court appearance. So for criminal court, for example, and I know this from my own days as a defense attorney, that court is open. Judges typically get on the bench around 10 and stay till 4:30. If you get there at 11, which I sometimes did with my clients, you'll be heard before lunch. If you get there at 1, you'll be heard after lunch. So the phrase a scheduled appointment time, I don't think is one that is used by practitioners. The real question would be how many people that we produce get a court appearance that day. That's what matters to you and to me. And that is very hard for us to know because we don't have the OCA data. But I would be very, very surprised in jail cases if someone was in the building, even if they were in the building by 1 o'clock, that they didn't get a court appearance. So that's my first concern about the bill, is just the vagueness of that language.
We can always, we can always make technical changes to the bill to
no,
improve it, but I just want to make sure that, so you do support direct access to videos and additional reporting requirements, if at the very
I
least to
don't-
keep your numbers high.
I don't think that direct access is available, and as I say, will be more available because I don't think subpoenas are necessary. I think the reporting requirement is not necessary. If you want the data, as Chair Brewer knows, we will get it for you. The other thing that concerns me is a notion that defense attorneys, prosecutors should call Warden Caputo directly. I don't think that's a good practice. I think they should call our legal division. We'll get them information. But I don't like either defense attorneys or prosecutors talking to a non-attorney on the island.
All right, I'm going to just ask one more question. And we've been joined by Councilmember Abreu and Councilmember Velasquez.
And Councilmember Ressler, too.
And Councilmember Ressler. Okay, so I'm just going to ask this last question before I turn it over to Chair Brewer. In 2021, Joe Russo, president of the Assistant Deputy Wardens Association, attributed DOC's failure to produce individuals to court to staff shortages. And according to Russo, jail officials had to use the department's centralized busing system to transport detainees around Rikers Island or to the hospital instead of to court due to a lack of staff. Has DOC's inability to staff an escort ever caused someone to miss court in the past year or so, yes or no?
Oh, I don't know about the past year. I've only been at the department, I guess, since August, and there was no doubt that during COVID we had a serious staffing crisis. What I can tell you is that Warden Caputo has sufficient staff, is not asking for more staff, and anyone who is not produced to court in this calendar year is not a result of lack of staffing.
So you're saying staffing issues do not cause people to miss court?
No.
You have enough staff. Okay. Well, I have a couple more questions, but I want to turn it over to Chair Brewer. Madam Chair?
Thank you. So
Thank you.
my question has to do with this video, because my understanding is that the staff that attended did see one individual who refused for religious reasons. Maybe that's legitimate, we don't know, because there was no video of that particular incident. So I'm wondering, like, do you have, either today or could get for us, the refusal videos for March 2023? I think you said there were 146. So that would
No,
be...
unfortunately for March, there were 1,176. Respectfully, I don't think you want those. But I can get you, and your staff can come meet us, I can get you, I think, all 146. Let me say this about the one individual who your staff saw. There was a refusal for religious reasons.
Correct.
We don't video those. Maybe we should, but we don't. We honor it. If the person says it's a religious observance, we honor it. What I plan to do, this hearing has the advantage that all hearings has, is that it focuses the mind. I plan to call the court and the chief judge, because we had 20 religious refusals so far this month.
I see it on your material here.
That means, and almost invariably, those are court appearances scheduled on a Friday. And that shouldn't happen if someone has a religious belief that prevents them from being in court on a Friday. And it should be easy. It should simply be a question of, is there a religious reason you can't be here? And if the judges will always ask that question before a Friday appearance, it'll help us.
Okay, so
But
the Friday issue is understandable.
But the person who you saw was Friday. It was a religious observance reasons. We honor it, we don't ask questions, and we don't video.
Okay. The other question is about the dashboard. Can you explain the dashboard? That is obviously the communication between the OCA, Department of Correction, and why the information is not shared with the attorneys for those who are coming from Rikers.
Good question. The dashboard is just that. It used to be, this was like most things on Rikers Island, and unfortunately the court as well. This was all paper and spreadsheets and emails
I
and the
understand
like. The dashboard tells us who is required to be in court the next day.
Yep.
Now, it's not perfect because there tend to be the next morning some add-ons, but it's awfully good and it gets us a start. And from that dashboard, starting around 10 p.m., we prepare the manifest for the next day. That dashboard shows the court who is on the way, who is there. And one of the things that Warden Caputo has talked to the court about is there a way to share that with a defense attorney?
Why wouldn't that be possible? It's just
Because
the
if you
technology.
yes and no, I think. Let me say this. Yes, but a little more sophisticated than I thought. You have to, first of all, you have to make sure it is the defense attorney, right? But they should be able to do that. Second of all, he can only have access, or she can only have access to their own client's information.
Correct.
Right? So that's the technology that you need. Somehow the person has to plug in, but it's doable.
I was going to say, if somebody wants help doing that, I'm sure I could find somebody, or even I could do it.
I think we can too.
It needs to be done.
It needs to be done, but I think it needs to be done on OCA's.
Okay, but I think all of us need to work together to solve these problems.
I think
You're going to work on the Friday issue, you're going to work on the
I'll work on this. I'll work on
subpoena
this.
issue, but I think we also need to work on this issue,
I
because in
do
order
too.
to address this transportation, all of these issues have to be addressed.
I agree. And now, this one is less severe given our numbers. A strong presumption now is if your client is scheduled for court, he'll be there. But you should be able to track. It's hard to be a legal aid lawyer because you're in all different court parts.
Because people have different information about why somebody is not there
they
if they
also-
don't have the information.
You also need to know, I mean, take the Friday refusals, right? If you're a defense attorney, you may show up in the part, but your client won't.
Okay.
That's not a good thing. So you
The
should
other question I have just about this wonderful 96%, there's been indication, I don't know if it's true, but it's certainly been indication that clients get to the court building, but not necessarily to the courtroom. So does this 96.1%, when you say produced where?
produced to the court and turned over to OCA. From
But
there,
that's where there may be a problem. In other words,
I don't think so. In
okay,
other
but
words,
others are stating something else.
maybe, but my own sense is that if that person is in the building and turned over to OCA and the judge knows it, the judge will see the person. So I don't think we have a in the courthouse problem. There is on occasion refusals to get off the bus, right? And that's something that we're dealing with as well.
Okay, but I just want to let you know that others feel that there is a discrepancy between the building and the actual courtroom itself. And that, if you had a good dashboard, somebody would know that. That's why you need the technology.
Well-
Between the defense attorney, then the court, and you, that information could be shared.
I don't disagree.
Okay, I'm a big believer in the technology. The other question I have is the process of getting people up in the morning, breakfast being not something that they want to eat necessarily, and then not having water or food all day. How do you address that? Because A, people may not want to go for the obvious reasons, and second, how do you act as a, somebody who's being grilled and you haven't eaten and you haven't had any water and you're in bad shape? Why is that not addressed?
I say this not to be cute. I don't think anyone in these court parts, unless you're on trial, is being grilled. But I agree completely.
You got to be able to present.
Well, I don't even think they present because I don't think their lawyers let them. But they certainly have to be
somebody
alert.
who feels like they should be provided food and water.
They certainly have to be alert and ready for that court appearance.
Alert is fine.
They are provided food.
Okay, there's a
Not-
feeling, again, information different from what you're stating.
No, if your two staff members it's an OCA issue, but if you want to come in the building and see it, I'm not saying it's the best sandwich, but they are provided food. Getting up at 5 o'clock and going to court is not a happy experience. My clients, who were mostly in federal custody, hated court appearance dates. And they hated it for a couple of reasons, one of which is you have to get up early. We're trying to get people on that bus by 6:30. And the second reason is oftentimes when you get to the courthouse, not much happens. The case gets adjourned. So it's not something that people relish, which I think is one of the reasons our refusal numbers were high. But we don't have an alternative to get people up at 5 if we're going to get them to court.
Let me ask you about staffing. Obviously, according to our material, $32 million, 314 staff members. You've got vans, you've got buses. Is there a staffing issue in getting people to court? And if so, how is it being addressed?
There is not currently a staffing issue, and I attribute the ability to use the staff he has to Warden Caputo, who has done a superb job here. And I've gone. Your staff got there earlier than me. I got there at 6. But I've seen it, and there's not a staffing shortage issue.
Okay. And then the other issue, of course, is there force, I'm not saying this is a good thing, but is force being used to get people to court, and if so, when? And under what circumstances? I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just trying to get information.
That goes back to a question that Chair Rivera and I discussed.
Correct.
When that number hit 1176 in March, 1176 refusals, I made a recommendation to the commissioner, which he accepted, that we be allowed to use what is called soft hands force, which is to say we could take someone by the arm and put them on the bus. No chemicals used, no other force. But the reason those numbers have dropped so dramatically, I think, in the last 2 months, remember we're at 146 now, is that staff is allowed to use and videotape soft hand force. Now, wasn't going to let the numbers stay at 1176, right? As you say, people have reasons for not wanting to get to court, and I can discuss them more with you. But I said, I think it is acceptable to take somebody by the arm and put them on the bus. What Warden Caputo said to me was, we had a policy that said you have a right to refuse. I don't think you have a right to refuse. I think you have an obligation to be in court. I don't think one wants to use any unnecessary force, any excessive force. But saying to people, which we now do, get on the bus, right? Most of what is used here is just that. It is saying firmly, you got to get on the bus.
You know how many people are soft hands force versus voluntarily going to court?
Yes, I do.
Even in your current statistics that you have here?
I do, and they are in May. They are 3 times. One on May 16th, one on May 18th, one on May 22nd, all recorded. And what you learn, which is not surprising, is if you say to people, get on the bus, and if they know you're going to grab them by the arm and put them on the bus, they go on the bus and you don't have to use force.
Okay. And how does the attorney for that individual know that that's how the person got on the bus? Is there some relaying of that information?
Unless it comes from the client to the attorney, we don't provide it. But as I say, that force is so minor on 3 occasions, I'm not sure we need a policy that says we have to broadcast it, and clients talk to their lawyers.
So, my understanding, I could be wrong, that if any other kind of force was used, it would have to go back to the judge to determine.
That's right. And
Has that ever happened in this 146 number?
no.
Okay.
Chair Brewer, can I go?
Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll go to the
I just want to
colleagues.
point of clarification, because the spike in refusals, there was a spike in refusals, you mentioned, and then there was a decrease.
Dramatic.
And from the 1176. So you're saying that, do you attribute that in terms of your insight to the soft hands approach?
I do, 3 occasions, right? And also saying to people, firmly get on the bus. What we said before during that period when it went from 467 to 1176 was, you have a right to refuse, fine. We treated it as if it was a religious refusal, and we don't anymore.
All right, I'll be interested to hear from other people testifying on some of those interactions. And just for the record, I wanted to just ask, what do you actually define as a refusal? Pursuant to what? Like, what is your directive on video recordings?
Anyone who refuses almost anything on Rikers Island, we video. So if you refuse a medical appointment, we will visit video and record it. If you are at Writ Court, which is on the island, there's no transportation. If you say, I'm not gone, we video it. So a refusal is just that. It is someone saying, thanks, but I'm not going when they have a court appearance that we believe they're obliged to go to.
Councilmember Joseph is here also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we're going to turn it over to Councilmember Ressler for questions.
Thank you very much, Deputy Commissioner Scheckman. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
And I will say, your job is one of the hardest to recruit for in city government.
My friends say the same thing and ask why I took it, but I'm happy that I did.
You deserve credit for taking it, but it's one of the hardest jobs to recruit for in city government because we all know well just how profoundly problematic the ingrained practices have been at the Department of Correction for so long. And as the General Counsel and the defender of the agency in so many different legal fronts, it's a challenging task, but appreciate your service and commitment to the city. Unfortunately,
Would you tell that to Commissioner Merlino?
I think I have, but I'll say it again if he ever wants to hear from me. I don't know. I think Commissioner Molina isn't so happy with me anymore these days. But that being said, I am deeply, deeply disturbed by the latest Monitor's report. And the incessant violence on Rikers and the lack of transparency and accountability that accompanies it is worse than ever, which is really saying something considering just how deeply problematic Rikers Island has always been. It must close. It must close immediately. I'm terribly disappointed by the delays of this administration that it seems clear has no real commitment to close Rikers Island. But I've come to the conclusion that we need independent, immediate oversight of Rikers Island now. And that's why I am supportive of receivership. The Federal Monitor has been in place for many years, for nearly a decade, for a better part of a decade, and the improvement is just not there. And even the lack of communication information being shared with the Monitor is unacceptable. So I just wanted to say that at the jump because I imagine, like many in this room, we were just horrified by the latest Monitor's report. And the status quo is unacceptable. Our most basic responsibility as public servants are to keep the people in our custody and responsibility safe. And too many are dying on Rikers Island. Too many are ending up on the receiving end of brutal violence. But I just wanted to start on the court production side. We went from the PMR showing 72% of people being taken to court by DOC on time, provided in court on time, to, according to the data you shared for the first 3 weeks in May, 96%, which is quite a remarkable turnaround. Almost, it almost is hard to believe. So
Your question.
what is the, Chair, you're not interested in my opining? All right, well, I think the context is important here. So, always interested in your perspective, though. How do you explain such an extraordinary improvement in just a few months' time?
Well, I did, which is to say, if you look at the numbers, right, we saw a dramatic spike when the policy was, and I can tell you why the policy changed, when the policy was that people have a right to refuse, and it went to 1,176 in March, and I think that a report of the mayor's preliminary report goes through that period and obviously doesn't include anything more. So if you tell people they have a right to refuse, and if going to court is not a happy experience, and I don't know how much criminal defense work you have done, but too often when you go to court, the answer is adjourned. And so, given an opportunity to refuse, people did, in very large numbers, right? You may criticize me for making a policy decision that said people don't have a right to refuse. If you are off the island, you don't have a right not to go to court. If you're on the island, you have an obligation to go to court.
When did the offer of the right to refuse start as new policy at DOC?
Say again?
When did DOC begin offering detainees the choice to refuse?
I can be pretty precise about it, which was, I think, late October of 2022.
Late October of 2022. Do you know the reason for the change in policy?
I do. A very fine federal judge, I don't know if you know Paul Engelmeyer, but he's among the best, issued an opinion in a summary judgment case criticizing us for using chemical spray to get someone on a bus, an individual for whom chemical spray was contraindicated. And at least in summary judgment, he said that's wrong and that case should proceed to trial. I think I wasn't involved. I think we overread the case and took it for the proposition that no force can be used and people have a right to refuse. And so if you look at the numbers, coming into September, October, we were at 29 refusals, 98 refusals.
Right.
And once you say people have a right to refuse, those numbers spiked. And again, I made the recommendation, the commissioner accepted it, that we can't use chemical spray. First of all, you use chemical spray, you have to decontaminate someone, you slow down the bus, right? But that you can, first of all, tell people you do not have a right to refuse, you have to get on the bus. And second of all, if they disagree with that, to take them by the arm and put them on the bus. And we are doing that, and what Warden Caputo told me, and what's proven to be true, is once that message gets out, you do not have to use force. And we're not, but we are prepared to use soft hand techniques if we have to. And so this is one where the data tells the story. You see it dramatically increase, and you see it dramatically decline.
And do you know the average number of days between court appearances for people in DOC custody?
I don't. For my own clients, it could be as much as 6 weeks. Now, these are jail cases, and they tend to be quicker, but it can, I think typically the answer is, and I tried to look some, typically the answer is a month. And so what that means is, and we saw this, if you have 2 or 3 successive refusals, you can be slowing down a case 5 months.
The data we saw from December showed that the average time between court appearances for people in DOC custody was 57 days, and that only a quarter of people on the island actually had a court appearance scheduled within the next month.
Not on us, right?
No, of course, that's OCA's failures, but, and there's an absolute need to speed up trials, but we are concerned that the delays in providing people to court over the previous months in the year have contributed negatively to those numbers.
I couldn't agree more. When I learned that we were, I think I learned it sometime when we were at 871, that 871 people were refusing, I thought, you can't tolerate this, right? Because, and the court's view was 3 times we'll give you a force order that says you can use all necessary force, right? Well, I don't like force orders because of that language. And I don't like waiting 3 times because, as you say, that can be 5 months in those situations. So you're totally right here. These delays, these failures to produce, which were rampant, were not helpful to a problem that's serious.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just so we have Williams and Cushman, and next is Joseph.
We're going to hear from Council Members Joseph, followed by Williams.
Good morning. Thank you, chairs. Just 2 questions. What steps are taken to accommodate any special needs or disabilities of detained individuals during transportation to court?
It's a good question, and we have 3 wheelchair buses that are available, and we have vans that are available besides the wheelchair buses and the regular buses. So we're sensitive to the issue and are trying to make sure that disabilities don't prevent production.
Okay, thank you. How does the DOC address complaints or concerns related to transportation of detained individuals to court?
God, I think we address them like we do any other. There is a grievance committee or grievance unit. There aren't that many grievances about production. The grievances tend to be about the long delays in the courthouse and the fact that the sandwich isn't the best sandwich. So they tend to be more about conditions in the courthouse and delay in the courthouse than they happen to be about the production process. I think I'm right on that. I haven't looked at the grievances, but that's what I've been told.
I was about to ask the follow-up, well, how many did you get for this year, but you don't know? You'll be able to report back to the committee on the numbers of how many complaints you've gotten?
Certainly, and I'll try to categorize them for you.
Okay. And are there any specific procedures in place to handle medical emergencies or other unforeseen incidents during transportation to court?
Yes, look, if there's, and it doesn't happen, it's a rare instance. If there's any incident on that bus, we will pull over in a safe location, call the department, call NYPD, and handle it. In the courthouse, there are occasionally medical emergencies. I should say, and I don't think I testified to this, before anyone is brought to the intake area and put on a bus, if they have medical needs, we have people who have daily requirements of medicine. They are taken to the clinic and given that medicine. And if anyone says, I can't go to court for medical reasons, and CHS confirms that, they don't go to court. Those numbers are in my testimony. They're not large, but anyone that CHS says should not be in the court is not brought to court. There are occasionally times when someone in the court has a medical emergency. We don't have, CHS doesn't staff the court parts, but we call EMS and try to respond appropriately.
Because some folks have time release medication, and I'm looking at the time span. You pick up a detainee from 5 a.m. and sometimes they don't get to court, or 4 p.m. How is someone prepared to provide care for that person?
I don't know, and I can try to find an answer. I do know that they're taken to the clinic before, and I know that CHS must be sensitive to that issue. I don't know how they deal with it.
Thank you, chairs.
I just want to ask one question in the interim, because I know it's like DOC, OCA. So are there ongoing discussions? Are there meetings with OCA, the DAs, correction, Mock J, defense counsel, et cetera? Are there such meetings to try to iron out? Obviously, this hearing will try to propel such discussions, but have there been such discussions in the past, or are there ongoing discussions?
I can tell you that Warden Caputo meets regularly with the chief judges in each borough, and this is unsurprisingly a major topic. I've spoken to the chief judge recently in Manhattan, and she confirms verbally what the statistics show, that we are much better. There's not a regular meeting with legal aid. The commissioner does meet with the legal aid lawyers on the island.
It just seems to me that at this crunch time, it makes sense. Food is an issue, medicine is the issue, timing is of the issue. There are things that could be addressed, so something to consider.
Understood. And I should say, the meetings that Warden Caputo has with legal aid tend to revolve around parole cases.
I understand that we're looking at the transportation as an example of what could be addressed.
You know, and that
Transportation plus.
and those parole cases can present a transportation issue for us.
Thank you for that. I want to call on Councilmember Williams.
Thank you so much, Chair. Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Is the question, did I wish I could extend my Memorial Day weekend?
I understand. Well, thanks for your patience.
I'm fine.
So I have a question about DOC and how you define refusal to attend court when a person in custody has a mental illness. Is there a different way that you define refusal if someone is having or is dealing with a mental illness?
No. In other words, look, no one is punished for refusing, and so those statistics, right? If that was a person with a mental illness, and they refused before the last few months, that refusal was honored. Now, mental illness or not, our view is you should be before the court. Indeed, it may be more important that you be before the court, as some recent events show. So we're trying to get those people, and we can typically do it with persuasion, of just saying, please get on the bus, it's in your interest, but we don't define it differently.
Okay, thank you. Is there a process to identify the individuals who are missing court most frequently and resolve the underlying issues?
I can tell you this, and I may not be addressing your question directly. When I got there, I asked for and received a list of people who were on the island for more than 2 years who had slashed people 4 times, right? It would be good if those cases were resolved promptly. And I wrote a letter to the chief judge and said, could you push these cases forward, right? I wasn't that successful. Cases seemed to move at their own pace. But we know when people have refusal after refusal, the DAs know, and typically in those cases in the past, the DAs would get force orders that said, use all necessary force. I don't like that. And so what we've said now is, get on the bus, please get on the bus, okay, I'm taking you on the bus.
Okay, so you do have a list of individuals who are frequently missing court.
If you said to me, go back to, pick a date, go back to,
No, if I said to you, like, tell me the top 10 individuals, you know, list their names who missed court 5 or more times, can you pull a list of everyone who missed court 5 or more times?
in the last year, I probably could do that.
So there's a process, or would you have to, like, aggregate the data yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no streamlined process. You would have to look at the data and then aggregate the data based off of all the folks who said, or all the folks who missed court.
Yeah, look, the other way I can do it, and I have done it, is to ask those cases where there's a force order. And that typically happens after 3 refusals. So that's easy to get your 3 refusals. 5 is going to take a little work.
So
but
something gets triggered if a person in custody refuses three times?
Usually the prosecutor triggers.
Usually. So when would it not be triggered?
The judge can trigger it on his or her own.
Okay. Last but not least question, when are people in courthouse pens fed? Is it by request, by how long they've been there, or is there a scheduled lunch when everyone is fed?
They get lunch at a scheduled time. I don't know what it is.
So let's say someone is actually in the courtroom at this designated time. Who in the DOC court command staff is responsible for making sure people are fed?
Well, DOC staff isn't because they're then in OCA custody. But if
So
they're
who
in-
provides the meals, DOC or OCA?
I think OCA, right? We provide the food, but it's not our.
So if
it's not our-
someone's in the court
They
and
get it. They get it as soon as they get back.
Councilmember, we asked about this earlier, and this is
Oh,
why we
okay.
need meetings. Well, you're absolutely right. We need the meetings between OCA.
okay,
DOC.
somebody told me you didn't ask this question, but okay, if
Perfect
you
need
already
for-
asked it already. They still seem to be confused about the answer though.
And I think Chair Brewer's staff saw the sandwiches.
Yeah, and the same staff actually are the folks who told me to ask you this question.
They're-
So
they're-
I
they're
think that
good.
there's
No,
still
if you-
some lack of clarity around when
No,
people
I
are
can-
fed, if they're
I can
leaving at 5
I can
a.m. and then there until 4 p.m. and,
No, people can be there for a long time, but they are all fed.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Yep.
I want to thank Councilmember Williams because it's important that, we highlight and underline issues. I mean, we have advocates, attorneys have told us over and over again that people are getting to court or not getting to court. Either way, they're complaining of being hungry, of not receiving sort of getting their essential needs met. So I just want to thank you for your line of questioning. I just want to quickly recognize this delegation of students from the Cavallero School in Bensonhurst, IS 281. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you enjoy your time in City Hall and that hopefully you see maybe a path to being a public servant yourself. Okay, with that, we do have Councilmember Krishnan for questions.
And Councilmember Stevens is here.
Thank you so much, Chairs Rivera and Brewer, for today's hearing. Good to see you, Council, again. I just had a few questions, given the gravity of the issues that we're hearing today. I mean, the fact of the matter is there are differences between OCA's report and the data they're showing of production, and you all claiming that there aren't any issues. So just a couple questions that I've got. First would be, how many individuals are transported on each bus at a time, and how many buses are on the fleet?
I can give you that if you'll give me one second. We have 18 20-seat buses.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
We have 18 28-seat buses. We have 12 20-seat buses. We have 1 18-seat buses. We have 3 wheelchair buses, 1 court van, actually 5 court vans. It turns out, and this is I mean, you said there are issues, and one of our issues is, one of the advantages of borough-based jails, obviously, is, I don't want to put Warden Caputo out of business, but they have the advantage that for those people who are in those jails, there's no real transportation costs, and that's how it used to be in this city. But in the interim, what has happened at these facilities is, with construction, the sally ports have been narrowed. And so for Brooklyn Criminal Court, for example, we actually have to park that bus at the Supreme Court, and then we take, I don't know what the right word is, like speedboats, and transport people from the Supreme Court to the criminal court. I think it's happening at Queens as well, that the sally ports have been narrowed. It's beyond our control, but it does slow down production. And Chair Rivera, one of the reasons I'm reluctant to measure our success on some arbitrary, did you get them to court on time, as opposed to did they get before the judge, is I think as construction increases, we're going to have more Sallyport issues. We'll solve them, but it doesn't help when you have to take someone to Brooklyn Criminal Court and you have to stop at the Supreme Court, which I guess is on J Street, and then take a special vehicle. But that's the number of vehicles we have. It's adequate.
And are those vehicles always full? How many individuals are being transported at any given time to a court?
They're not always full. For example, we try to get out a trial bus as a priority. And it may be that we don't have X number of people to fill the trial bus. But for the most part, we're sending full buses.
Thank you. And you touched upon this before, but it is a concern that advocates keep raising as well about ensuring that the correct individuals are transported to court, that there are instances in the past that has not been the case. So what exactly is, one instance of the wrong production is one too many, in my opinion. So how exactly do you ensure that that error does not happen?
My opinion is, as well, Councilman, we get the list from the court. The list has identifiers on it. We get some add-ons in the morning. Before anybody is put on a bus, information is checked. There's literally a piece of paper that each person goes with each person to make sure we have the right person. Look, your staff was there. Getting people on those buses to 5 different boroughs can be chaotic some mornings. So I can't tell you that no mistakes are made, but I think our record of getting the right people to the right place is now very good.
And just 2 more questions. One, on that point, the concern that I have, whether there's production of the wrong individuals who are incarcerated, delays in production, is that this raises serious questions about the potential for procedural due process violations. Having practiced in court representing tenants in housing court, but it's very similar in criminal court too, the lengthy delays in court proceedings when production is delayed sets back the entire schedule. The court's cases are already backlogged. The caseloads are heavy for the judges. So any delays could really be the difference between individuals having an opportunity to speak with their counsel, as is their constitutional right, and their ability to have meaningful procedural due process. And so I wonder how you all address the issue of DOC not actually infringing upon individuals' procedural due process rights given these repeated delays.
I may be the first person to answer your question by saying so stipulated, but I agree with everything you said, and it is a priority to us to get people to court. The result of not getting people to court, as Councilman Ressler said, is you can delay a case for a long time, and delay is not in the public interest, and it's not in our interest.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do as, again, I think...
I should add what's obvious. Now, there are times when it may be in the defendant's interest, but as a general matter, I think people want to go to court.
Well, I think that it's good that DOC, or that you share that concern as counsel for DOC and want to ensure that the constitutional rights are respected. I do want to close by calling attention to a really shocking special report that came out maybe about a week and a half ago at this point. And there were things noted in there really where the Federal Monitor raised, and I want to read a couple excerpts to address the larger issues in particular at Rikers, that there is, quote, significant cause for concern about the imminent risk of harm to people in custody. And the Monitor also noted that the DOC Commissioner's defense of the accusations, quote, raises significant concerns about whether the Commission and the Department fully appreciate the gravity of the issues at hand and the importance of transparency and oversight, end quote. And I read both those into the record because whether it's the issues of attacks, harm, life-threatening attacks at Rikers Island, whether it's the issue of delays in court production and ensuring that individuals' constitutional rights to due process are protected, there's a difference between hearing these concerns, working to address them, and what is actually happening on the ground. And my big concern is is the department appreciating? Because the department seems to be the only one, including with the Federal Monitor, saying that things are being addressed, that production time is better, that we're responding to the Federal Monitor's orders, yet the Monitor itself is issuing scathing reports about the department's compliance with these issues. There's no doubt that the issues with Rikers Island goes back decades, frankly, but it's the response to these issues that are raised and actually addressing them that is becoming a larger and larger red flag for this council. So in light of that report, whether it's this issue or the larger issues at Rikers, it seems to me that there needs to be serious conversations and examination within the department of how it is responding to its own Federal Monitor's serious concerns about compliance with the issues that are being raised. Thank you.
I just want to bring up, first of all, thank you for your honest answer, but I'm a big believer in the unit of appropriations, and my question is, obviously, what I would love to see is a distinct unit of appropriation for court transportation in corrections budget, because it would help for me, and I think for the public, to ensure that the department's expenses toward the core mission of getting people to court efficiently would be reported transparently. So I want to know if you can commit to working with OMB and the council to include a distinct unit of appropriation for court transportation for the 24 adopted budget.
Chair Brewer, I just say this. It makes sense. I can confidently say you're not talking to a budget person. OMB may have its own views, but I understand yours, and I understand where they're coming from.
So, as General Counsel, you think it's a great idea?
I was told that any interchange with you would be interesting.
Okay.
I take it this is part of that.
The other question I say is, whether it's food, whether it's some of the other issues that have been addressed today, I am urging, but also will hopefully mandate some discussion on an ongoing basis between all the stakeholders. Because we all need to solve this. These are solvable problems. You know, creating some of the other issues might be harder. Closing Rikers is difficult. I'm very supportive. But this needs to be addressed. Thank you.
And I would say I appreciate that you as an attorney have said that a certain level of detail is absolutely necessary when it comes to something as serious as documenting a waiver of a constitutional right. So I appreciate your testimony today. I just want to reiterate, you know, the monitor, I think all of us here, and I think you agree that expeditiously processing court cases is important to reducing the jail population. I think it's important that people have their day in court and that it's done as proficiently as possible. And with that, I know we're going to hear from a number of advocates. I know your team is here to hear from them and to ensure that we're all working collaboratively. So with that, I want to thank you for your testimony, for your honest answers, and we look forward to working with you in partnership.
Same. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to hear from the Board of Correction next. Che Park Messina is here to testify. Thank you, Che. Thank you. Deputy Executive Director of Monitoring and Research.
Ms. Park Messina, if you could raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and respond honestly to council member questions?
I do.
Thank you. You can begin your testimony.
Good morning, Chairs Brewer and Rivera, and members of the New York City Council Committees on Criminal Justice and Oversight and Investigations. I am Che Park Messina, Deputy Executive Director of Monitoring and Research at the New York City Board of Correction. I thank the Council for the opportunity to testify today about the Department of Corrections' transportation of detained individuals to court. I will begin my testimony by providing a brief background on BOC's mission and work, followed by some information on our current monitoring efforts around court production. BOC is a 9-member independent oversight board charged with ensuring that the Department of Correction and Correctional Health Services meet the minimum standards set forth by the board, regulating conditions of confinement and correctional health and mental health care in all city jails. The minimum standards establish the baseline for DOC and CHS, and their meeting this baseline is critical as the city endeavors to move towards a more humane correctional system. Accordingly, at BOC, our role is to promulgate and enforce regulations and carry out independent oversight of jail operations. To that end, BOC remains committed to operating with transparency in our evaluation and reporting of systemic jail issues. The Board of Correction recognizes the broad impact that a potentially ineffective or inefficient court production system can have on the rights of people in custody, the city's criminal justice system, and on the jail census. Accordingly, Section 1-08 of the minimum standards covers court production and requires DOC, in part, to provide timely transportation of people in custody to their scheduled court appearances. However, as we testified during our March 2023 preliminary budget hearing, the board lacks the headcount necessary to monitor and enforce the full range of our regulations, including Section 1-08. As it stands, our 12 monitoring staff members are responsible for carrying out oversight activities at the 8 New York City jails that are currently open, 7 on Rikers Island and 1 in the Bronx, courthouse holding pens across the 5 boroughs, and the 2 hospital prison wards, 1 in Queens and the other in Manhattan. Despite our limited staffing, our monitoring staff periodically visit the courthouse holding pens across all 5 boroughs to monitor court production. Our staff also have received and followed up on complaints from people in custody regarding court production. Moreover, to inform our understanding of the issues around court production, our staff recently reviewed body-worn and handheld video footage of court refusals. That is, instances when DOC has represented that non-production was due to the person in custody's refusal to be transported to court. The Board of Correction recognizes that court production is complex and that problems may arise throughout the process, from escorting people to intake for transfer to buses leaving for court, usually between 4 and 7 a.m., to the availability of appropriate vehicles, to the actual production of individuals in courtrooms, even after they have been brought to the courthouse. There also may be inefficiencies in the court return process itself, whereby people in custody sometimes wait for hours on the bus after returning from court in restraints and without access to toilets, medications, or food, before they are let off the bus and returned to their housing areas, sometimes late at night. These factors sometimes discourage people in custody from going to court, but the magnitude of their impact on the volume of refusals is yet unclear. Ideally, with increased staffing, we would be better positioned to monitor timely court production consistently, and BOC would have more capacity to produce reporting on this very important subject. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today. We look forward to partnering with the City Council to ensure that the minimum standards, including those pertaining to court production, are met. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. And I know you mentioned here your limited staffing and trying to do everything you can to periodically visit and to ensure that you're holding all stakeholders and people involved accountable. So you mentioned the BOC minimum standards on timely transportation to court appearances. I think we can all agree on that. When a person in custody refuses to appear in court, DOC is supposed to have the individual sign what is called an undelivered defendant notification form in front of a witness. Does the board receive these forms?
Yes, we receive scanned copies of the completed undelivered defendant forms daily.
And they're signed, would you say that the forms are properly signed by the person in custody?
I can only speak to the forms that we reviewed recently, and that will be from Monday, May 15th through Friday, May 19th. And in that period, we received 43 completed undelivered defendant forms. Of the 43, 5 were signed by people in custody, so 11.6%.
Okay. If a person in custody refuses to appear in court and refuses to sign the undelivered defendant notification form, it is DOC policy to capture the refusal on video. Has the board tried to access these videos? And when we received news that they were curtailing access, they were putting the restrictions in, has that impacted the board's ability to monitor the conditions in court production?
Yes, it has. In the past, we used to have direct access to the folder on the Department of Corrections systems where the facilities save their handheld video footage. But our direct access to that folder was curtailed around the same time that the department restricted our access to Genetec, that is their surveillance system. In the past, we also had direct access to DOC's body-worn camera system, but that too was restricted at around the same time. Now, to your earlier question on whether the board has tried to access these videos recently, the answer is yes. Most recently in April of this year. On April 5th of this year, we requested all court refusal videos for the day before, so for April 4th. DOC had informed board staff that 72 court refusals were captured on handheld or body-worn video. Such footage existed, and that they would be made available to us. Ultimately, though, despite 3 separate attempts to, across 3 separate dates to access those videos, we were provided only with 11 videos, so that's 11 of the 72.
I'm sorry to hear that. So 11 out of 72, you just mentioned 5 forms had been signed out of 43. Clearly, huge discrepancies and no sort of reflection of what should be a partnership in terms of accountability and collaboration. And I'm sorry to hear that. We're going to try to not only ensure that you have the access that you need, but to follow up on some of these requests that have not been fulfilled to the satisfaction, or I should say the minimum standards. Chair Brewer?
Yeah, we're also trying to get you more money. I just want you to know that. I feel very strongly about it. You and Department of Investigation need money. The question I have is, I assume that this transportation issue, which we are focused on today, is part of BOC's minimum standards, and therefore you are paying close attention to it. So my question is, we heard today that there are certain refusals that are not videotaped, not to mention that you can't get all the videotaped, that's a different topic. But do you think that all refusals should be videotaped? And obviously, could you be more explicit as to how having that on a more accessible basis could help you do your job?
Well, in the first instance, with respect to whether all refusals should be videotaped, to be certain, there are 2 relevant DOC policies on that, actually. And I think the General Counsel did speak to one of them, and that is the DOC Directive on Handheld Recording Equipment and Electronic Evidence, which actually requires that all court production refusals be recorded on handheld video. There's also the DOC Operations Order on body-worn cameras, which in essence requires DOC to record all interactions with people in custody, which necessarily would include court refusals on body-worn cameras. And so previously, when we did have access to the folders where DOC saves the handheld videos and where we had direct access to the body-worn camera system, to get those restored certainly would allow us to monitor those refusals more effectively.
Whoops. Do you also think that some discussion between, the correction is blaming, it seems to me, OCA for almost everything, for the food timing, for the Sally Port issues, for the timing issues, and we don't even know if individuals get to the courthouse, do they also get to the courtroom, which is a big difference. So I would just wonder if that's something that you also monitor, and how do you think these horrific issues, in my opinion, need to be addressed?
Well, on the issue of, or the question pertaining to access to the courtroom itself once they're brought to the courthouse. It is interesting that you raised that because of the complaints that we received this year. A fair number of them were on that issue specifically. In one of the complaints that we received from a person in custody, he alleged that DOC had transported him to the courthouse 6 times, but that he was never actually produced before a judge, and instead was forced to wait in the courthouse pen all day, and then only to be taken back to the jail facility at the end of the day without ever having stepped foot in the courtroom. Similarly, we received another complaint this year regarding an individual who alleged that he missed 3 court appearances that he missed because he was never produced in the courtroom, although he was in the courthouse. Now, in that complaint, the complaint further stated that his family was in the courtroom on those 3 occasions and alleged that when his case was called by the court on each of those 3 dates, the court was informed that he was not in the courthouse.
With all due respect to the general counsel, we have heard these same complaints, and he did not address that when he has his 96% number. It doesn't address the real issue. Did you see a judge? Or were you in a courtroom, not just a courthouse? So that number needs to be examined very, very carefully, which is why I suggested that this dashboard be something that is actually helpful to the, specifics, not just what it's doing. And that's where you need to have, in my opinion, the court needs to make sure that the attorney for the defendant is involved, because that person can say whether that person is or is not in the courtroom and might change that 96th percentile dramatically. Thank you.
And you do get complaints from the individuals on court production, clearly. Can you verify those complaints without video?
There are other ways of tracking whether an how the individual moves, like whether the person is still at the facility or whether that person was brought to the courthouse. So indeed, there are other ways of tracking whether the person actually made it to the courthouse. Now, whether the person actually made it to the courtroom, that's an issue that OCA is in a better position to address.
Councilmember Yeager's here too. Thank you.
Well, again, we're going to continue to work with you on this issue. That's why there is legislation being presented today to codify what we think should be minimum standards in terms of transparency, documentation, and what we need to ensure that people are getting to court and ultimately reduce the population. So thank you for everything. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your testimony. And with that, we will move on to the next panel. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. We're going to work on your money.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call up the next panel. Marva Brown, Conrad Bakubam, Joshua White, and Celia Joyce. And on this panel, we'll also hear from Alyssa Brody.
Whomever would like to start, go ahead. We're ready.
Good morning. My name is Marva Brown. I'm a lawyer with the Legal Aid Society. I practice in our Special Litigation and Law Reform Unit of our criminal defense practice. I've been a public defender for more than 16 years, and I'm honored to be back in front of the council to offer comments on the New York City Department of Corrections' failure to produce clients to court on scheduled court dates. I've represented many clients where at arraignments, bail was set, and the New York City Department of Corrections was charged with ensuring the client's return to court. Unfortunately, however, there are too many occasions when, as a defense attorney, I've sat in court on a scheduled court appearance date, waiting for hours on end for an incarcerated client who is simply not produced to court. There is little that a defense attorney can do in these situations except inquire to court staff and the Department of Corrections staff to try and locate the client, ask if he is going to be produced at all, and if not, adjourn the case. This leads to delays in the criminal process, wasted time for loved ones and witnesses, and increased periods of incarceration on matters that would otherwise be resolved had the client been produced to court. In October 2021, my colleagues in the Prisoners' Rights Practice and Special Litigation and Law Reform Unit brought a lawsuit, Agnew et al. V. New York City DOC, demanding that DOC provide everyone in custody access to medical care because DOC was, and still is, failing repeatedly to bring people in the jails to medical, mental health, dental, and outside specialist appointments. DOC has already been found in contempt of the court's order to provide people in custody access to medical and mental health care. Court production failures are harder to track, however, because it is largely up to individual attorneys to triage production failures. They work with supervisors in our office to make calls to try and get the client produced to court as soon as possible, but our case tracking system, which is populated by the Department of Corrections, only indicates incarceration status, not production statistics. Without data from the Department of Corrections, there is no way to know how pervasive the problem is. We sent out a survey to our attorneys in our trial office in all 5 boroughs to see if there were any common themes to be revealed in terms of court productions. The overarching message from respondents was that court productions have always been a problem. They got decidedly worse during the height of the pandemic, as DOC frequently did not produce clients to court claiming that the clients were in COVID isolation. But oftentimes, clients would call their attorneys asking why they weren't brought to court, as they did not have COVID and were not, in fact, in isolation. In recent months, the message from DOC has been that clients are refusing to come to court. These assertions are often revealed to be untrue because once attorneys speak with their clients on the phone, they find out the clients did not refuse. Furthermore, the benefit of the Agnew case has been that the body-worn cameras that became commonplace at Rikers in 2015 started being used to provide evidence of refusals. However, in several situations where attorneys requested refusal videos from DOC, the client was miraculously produced to court on the next bus from the island. This happened in the case of client Mr. M. in Queens. Mr. M had been continuously incarcerated for 6.5 years pending retrial on an appeal, and the court appearance Mr. M was alleged to have refused was for a bail application. His lawyer absolutely knew that he would not have refused, and he did not. When she requested the video, he was produced in court. Other problems that arise with court productions is extreme delay. Court typically starts at 9:30 a.m., and the informal expectation is that incarcerated clients will be produced to court by 10:30 or 11 a.m. Attorneys reported that they were told their clients were in transit, but when they spoke to the Department of Corrections staff directly, they learned that their clients had not yet left the island. Now attorneys are not allowed to call corrections directly to get this information. Additionally, many attorneys are reporting that clients are not getting to court until 2:15 or 3 o'clock. Late arrivals to court prevent litigation from moving forward as trial parts are designated on a first-come, first-served basis. When a case is on for hearings and the arrival time of an incarcerated client is uncertain, witnesses may be released from court to go about their business. Jury pools are sent to courtrooms on a first-come, first-served basis as well. Where incarcerated clients are late, there may not be enough or any jurors at all available to start jury selection. The case must be adjourned, and the process of waiting for the client to be produced starts all over again. These delays in production causes cases to linger on the court's docket even longer and increase periods of incarceration on Rikers Island, which is riddled with human rights violations. A remnant of COVID-19 is the hot sheet or dashboard placement for clients where DOC, due to staffing issues, would only produce incarcerated clients to their court appearances when they were placed on a secondary list. This circumvents the court dates as agreed upon by the parties and causes unnecessary delay. Sometimes we've heard that there are no buses, that a client was taken to the wrong courthouse, and that there was no excuse given as to why the client was produced. There were occasions where DOC faxed undelivered defendant forms to the court, only for the client to say that that was not his signature on the form. After arraignment where bail is set, the district attorney's office must secure an indictment within 5 days, not including holidays or weekends. But where DOC fails to produce a client, judges often grant good cause extensions, which in all actuality gives DAs more time to secure their indictments. Overall, court productions by DOC are unreliable and inconsistent. This council should require that the Department of Corrections record all alleged refusals and provide recordings to defense counsel via email as soon as the refusal is given. The Department of Corrections should facilitate a method by which a defense counsel can communicate with their incarcerated client via phone and/or video conference, where defense counsel can discuss court production with their client. Ultimately, however, DOC willfully fails to produce clients to their court appearances, thereby delaying the judicial process. Resources would be better spent on decarceration methods of supervised release, electronic monitoring, emergency reentry units, and supportive housing, so that we are not reliant upon the DOC to bring people to court. Thank you.
Good afternoon, or good morning, council members. My name is Joshua White. I am a public defender with the New York County Defender Services. I'm not as seasoned as my colleague. I've only been at this for about a couple of years. I am privileged, of course, to represent New Yorkers who are charged with crimes here in the borough of Manhattan. I wanted to start with just a brief story of one of my first experiences right down the street at 100 Center Street. I had a client who was charged with a misdemeanor at arraignment. It was his first arrest. He was recommended for release by the CJA. Bail was set on this client at an impossibly high amount, and he was given a return date back to court for a month later. I immediately moved to advance the case to have another judge make a determination about bail. So he was scheduled to be brought back to court 2 days later. He was not brought back to court that day. He was not brought back to court the next day or the day after. It was several attempts at requiring DOC to bring my client to court before he was finally brought to court. Now, when he was not produced, the assumption that was made by the court and by many officers was that my client was refusing. This is the assumption that's made quite often. And I know that it's not true because quite often our clients know that they are going home once they're brought to court. They have absolutely no incentive not to come when they're calling us every single day asking us what it's going to take to get them out of Rikers. And we tell them, we just need to bring you to court. We have an agreement, we have an arrangement, the judge is going to remove bail, there's a deal that you can take that's going to resolve this case in a non-criminal manner. They have absolutely every reason to come to court. And so when I'm told that they're refusing, I know it's simply not true. Now, there was a statement that DOC counsel had made, which is that clients are being brought to court for all of their required appearances. And I think that this counsel should really inquire as to what a required appearance is. Because when I make the point to the court that bail was set on my client to ensure that what's happening today doesn't happen, that they're actually brought to court, the response that's given to me is, well, this isn't a required court appearance. This is just an appearance that has been moved up so that you can potentially get your client out. Well, the same counsel for DOC is saying that we need to be working hard to advance these cases to get clients out. Well, when we advance cases, when we try to get our clients into court so that we can get them out of Rikers, quite often they're not brought to court. Just a couple of weeks ago, a judge illegally set bail on one of my clients. I advanced the case so that another judge could look at this illegally set bail and remove it, and that did happen. But it took 6 days for my client to be brought to court because there's no mechanism to ensure that our clients are brought to 100 Center Street if it's not on, as counsel for DOC has suggested, a required court date. Well, when someone is being unlawfully detained at Rikers or someone is being unnecessarily detained at Rikers, there needs to be a process to ensure that we can get them to court as soon as possible so that they can be released. And so thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Chairs and council members, my name is Conrad Blackburn, and I'm a public defender and policy counsel for criminal defense practice at the Bronx Defenders. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to testify here today and for your interest in this very important matter. My testimony today focuses on the continued failures of the New York City Department of Corrections, or DOC, to ensure that people held in DOC custody at Rikers Island and other city correctional facilities are brought to court for all court appearances and that they have a meaningful ability to participate in their own defense. Since the passage of New York State's bail laws in 1971, the sole purpose of pretrial detention has been to ensure an individual's return to court. This fundamental principle is rooted in the presumption of innocence and a recognition that pretrial detention imposes punishment prior to conviction of any crime. Thus, when someone is committed to DLC custody and caged at Rikers Island while awaiting trial, the sole purpose of that detention is to ensure that they are produced for their court dates. All of the horrific conditions that exist are endured in service of that single purpose. That means DLC's entire existence is premised on their ability to produce individuals to court. In this respect, they are failing miserably. In fiscal year 2022, individuals in DLC custody made only 79.1% of their court dates. During the first quarter of fiscal year 2023, only 72.2% of individuals were produced for their court dates. Meanwhile, the rate of return for people who were released and therefore not in DLC custody was 85% in 2019, 92% in 2020, and 91% through the first 9 months of 2021. Thus, individuals who are incarcerated pretrial are substantially less likely to make it to their court dates, defeating the entire purpose of their incarceration. This is unacceptable. Now, there are myriad reasons why DLC fails to ensure that people are brought to court for their court appearances, but one key reason is that the system used by DLC is completely antiquated. The department relies on old-fashioned pen and paper methods to track when people are next due in court, to record bail amounts set by judges, and to note when critical requests are made of the department, such as requests for medical attention or requests for protective custody. This is a problem. But outdated systems are just one reason for DOC's failures. Staff absenteeism and staff mismanagement continue to affect the department's ability to produce people to court. DOC often cites lack of escorts and/or captain escorts for failures to produce. This reason is frequently given for incarcerated individuals in mental observation units, restrictive housing settings, and people with high security classifications. The logistical obstacles these scenarios cause is only exacerbated by DOC's overuse of restrictive housing and security designations, as well as the subpar mental health and de-escalation training they receive. Lastly, quote-unquote refusals, where DOC alleges an individual has refused to come to court, have long been a source of contention for people in custody and their legal counsel. It is virtually impossible to challenge the legitimacy of a refusal. Requests for proof of a refusal are usually ignored or met with dismissive and unhelpful responses, leaving us advocates and our clients with little to no recourse. For this reason, we support the legislation to require meaningful recordings of alleged refusals and reporting of court productions, such as the bill carried by Council Members Rivera and Brewer. However, we believe to ensure accountability and maximize transparency, officers should be required to turn their body cameras on when they are approaching an incarcerated person so that the entire interaction is recorded. Additionally, the reporting requirement for production should include all court dates. As my esteemed colleague here pointed out, oftentimes DOC cites a court case not being a required court date. And our clients tell us that all the time. When they try to get on the bus, they're told they don't actually have court that day, when they in fact do. Now, currently, DOC limits their reports to appearances scheduled for hearing and trial, thus creating skewed data that makes it impossible to appreciate and understand the magnitude of DOC's failure to fulfill their primary purpose, ensure that people in custody are produced to court. They must record all court dates. Thank you.
I just want to mention that Councilmember Salamanca has joined us. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Celia Joyce. I am the Senior Data Analyst at New York County Defender Services. As my colleague Joshua mentioned, we are a public defender organization in Manhattan. We urge you to vote yes on the bill you are discussing today. Over the past 2 weeks, the NYCDS Data Research Unit surveyed attorneys, social workers, and corrections specialists on their experiences with DOC's transportation of incarcerated clients. 66% of our attorneys report that in the past 2 months, at least one of their clients has disputed an alleged refusal to be transported for a court appearance. Attorneys estimate that clients dispute over 60% of the court transportation refusals reported by DOC. DOC will often claim that a client refused transportation without providing copies of the required documentation, or will provide refusal paperwork stating that our client, quote, refused to sign, without including any additional information. It is our understanding that the bill discussed today will address this significant problem. The Department of Correction not only fails to transport clients to court appearances, they have also not transported clients to other important events. Our staff estimate that clients in DOC custody miss over 20% of their scheduled video conferences. 49% of staff indicated that in the past 2 months, at least one of their clients has disputed an alleged refusal to be transported to a video conference. We estimate that clients dispute 67% of the video conference refusals reported by DOC. 42% of surveyed staff report issues with DOC's transportation of clients to medical appointments. 40% of respondents report issues with transportation of clients to mental health appointments, and 32% report issues with transportation to psychological evaluations. Our survey shows that DOC transportation of incarcerated clients remains a significant problem and highlights the inability and negligence of DOC in fulfilling our clients' rights to be present at and fully informed for their court appearances. Our clients have indicated that they are frequently misinformed of where they're being transported, and as a result, may unwittingly refuse transportation in those situations. This bill should require DOC to record a comprehensive discussion with the detainee as to precisely where they are going to be transported, and if and why they are refusing transportation. This recording should include precise details of what proceeding the detainee is allegedly being transported to. Again, we urge you to pass this bill, and thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Alyssa Brody.
Wait, don't get up yet. She's on Zoom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Alyssa Bryady. I'm a senior attorney in the Civil Rights and Law Reform Unit at Brooklyn Defender Services. Prior to that, I worked in our criminal practice for 6 years. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. In New York, the only permissible purpose for incarcerating a person pre-trial is to ensure that they will return to court. Yet, in our experience, pretrial detention is less likely than release to result in a person's reliable appearance for court dates. Attorneys frequently wait all day in court for their clients in DOC custody to be produced, only to be told that their client is not being produced or refused to come to court. After a missed appearance, we will talk to our clients, and in many cases, we hear that people were prepared for court, but that no correction officer came to their housing unit, or they were taken to intake to wait for hours for a bus that never came. DOC is required to record video of any refusals to come to court, but they don't always comply with this requirement. We have asked DOC Legal for video and been told that none exists. And DOC generally requires a judicial subpoena to provide the video, so we're not able to get the video as quickly as we often need it. We have also obtained refusal videos that make it clear that our client did not actually refuse. For example, we received a video that was described as a refusal video, but the video just showed our client stating that he did not refuse to come to court and the bus left without him. Parents, children, and other loved ones may too be waiting all day in court for their family member to be produced. A court date is often a rare opportunity to see a loved one face to face, and many people take hours off work or days off of school to come to court to see a person without the trip to Rikers. They too may wait all day only to learn their loved one was not transported. There are many occasions where a client's non-production significantly prejudices their case and results in more time in jail. DOC has failed to produce clients on days that they are scheduled to take an advantageous plea deal, be released to a treatment program, or finally get to tell their side of the story in the grand jury. These are not the kind of court dates that someone would refuse to go to. But even outside of these pivotal court dates, each time a client is not produced, they are denied the opportunity to stand before a judge and hear firsthand what is happening in the criminal case that is depriving them of their liberty and confining them in deplorable conditions. And that is unacceptable. Counsel for DOC suggested that people frequently just don't want to go to their court dates, but that is not our experience. DOC must ensure people are produced, and the council must hold them accountable to this responsibility. We ask that the council require DOC to report production figures for all court dates, not
Time
just
has
hearing
expired.
interrupt dates. Just one more thing. It's also essential that video footage of alleged refusals be easily available to defense attorneys without a judicial subpoena so that DOC can't falsely blame our clients for their non-production. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have one quick question for those here, which is the dashboard, communication, et cetera. So you have no access to any of the technology that OCA and DOC are going back and forth. How would that be helpful to you? If not, what is it that you would like to see in terms of the dashboard or communication? Anybody who'd like to respond?
We don't have access to it, first of all.
We heard that from the general counsel.
Right. I think in terms of our law reform and special litigation unit, we might be able to use it to effectuate larger scale change if we have access to that data. So yes, we would appreciate access.
Everybody agrees?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams, you have a question?
Thank you so much, Chair. You asked about, what she asked about dashboard?
She just did ask about.
Okay, so you said something about 60%? I couldn't hear.
Yes, which I noted a few statistics.
You said something about 60% of attorneys reported that.
Yes, 66% of our attorneys report that in the past 2 months, at least one of their clients has disputed an alleged refusal to be transported for a court appearance.
Okay, and then you mentioned something about required court date. So are you saying that they're not recording when folks who are incarcerated are not going to court if it's not a required court date? They're only noting the times where it was required and they did not appear in court.
Yeah, I found the language to be particularly precise when counsel for the DOC noted that large statistic of folks being brought to court on required court dates, because he also noted the importance of advancing cases, moving cases along more quickly. And as counsel for folks who are at Rikers, I'm quite often told that they're not required to be brought to court if it's not for hearings or for trial. And so even if their being brought to court is necessary for their release, it's not a required court date. And so we make requests for production, and our clients are not brought to court on these dates that are not considered required court dates.
What are those type of court dates titled as? Like you said, like when you asked a judge to review the bail, like what is that? If it's not a hearing, it's not, what is it called?
So typically those types of hearings are, they're called bail reviews, and they're very important. A large number of my clients who are sent to Rikers with impossible bail, the only way for me to have that bail amount reviewed is through a hearing that's just known as a bail review. And so I need them brought to court because a lot of times judges will not feel comfortable releasing a client from Rikers if they can't inform that client when their next court appearance is or what particular conditions of release they are being released on. And so I'll show up for a hearing, the prosecutor will be there as well, the judge is there, and I'm told, well, we're not going to conduct this hearing if the client is not here. And so it does create a lot of challenges. And I mean, there have been times where my clients are brought to court, but they're not produced within the courtroom because logistically, DOC just can't figure out how to move my client from one part of the court to another part of the court. And so even though they've actually been brought to court, the hearing that I need my client to be a participant in can't actually be conducted.
So where is this list of like the criteria for something to be a required court date? Like, is that, it's not like.
There's no such thing, and that's the problem with the assertion that it's a required, they can only be produced for a required court appearance. Department of Corrections should not be making a determination as to what is a required court appearance. It's the judge, it's the defense counsel, the prosecutor, right? We know what's going to happen in the courtroom. Department of Corrections is not apprised of any particular proceeding unless it is, you know, the file is marked for trial, so the incarcerated person has to be in trial clothes or something like that. But they don't know all of the multiple proceedings that happen before trial, and it's not a decision that they should be able to make.
And yes, just to piggyback off of that, it's not just that DOC is not producing people for court dates that are not quote unquote required. It's also that they limit their reporting to those court dates that are for hearings and trial. So it's a double-edged sword there. And I'll just add that in the Bronx, at least what I've seen, judges are aware of the fact that DOC has problems producing people for court. And so they'll specifically say on the record, I'm marking this case for trial. I'm marking this case for hearings, so that DOC gets the memo that our client needs to be produced on the next court date.
But there's nothing official anywhere that delineates what, there's no criteria, there's nothing written anywhere. They're making arbitrary decisions in real time on what they deem required by way of. Okay, so essentially you're disputing this like 96% because you feel like the data is only skewed to reflect what they deem as required court dates versus overall all types of court dates and cases and hearings that a person would need to appear before a judge. Thank you.
And I appreciate that, Councilmember, because I think the discretion is the problem here, right? So we're trying to actually legislate, codify what is required. I appreciate your suggestions in terms of how to improve the language of the bill, and in terms of the reporting and how limited it is, hopefully we can get that into the bill language itself to be strong and to be able to document everything. And I agree earlier, the physical logistical challenges when you actually do get someone, they can't quite track the person, they can't find the person even when they are in the building, is completely unacceptable. And so your mention here on all court dates should be included. We're definitely going to take all of that into account, and I just want to thank you for sharing your experiences and doing this day in and day out, despite everything in your way and in your client's way in terms of receiving what they're due. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very
to
much.
this
Your
panel.
clients are very fortunate. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Chair, we have a tour upstairs, Baychester.
Going to recognize another school, PS 169, from the Baychester Academy in Councilmember Riley's district. Thank you for being here. I hope you are enjoying City Hall. What an exciting day. I hope you can see this is public service in action. So if you have any questions for us, I hope you'll let us know. We hope that some of you will consider public service or even being a city council member one day, okay?
Ask Councilmember Riley.
You have a great council member right there. All right, we're going to go to our last panel. It's going to include people in person, and then we're going to mention the names that are also joining us via Zoom, so we can make sure we have everybody on stack and hear from all participants. Jeremy?
Okay, the next panel we'll hear from Zachary Katz-Nelson, Ashley Conrad, Tanya Krupit, Eileen Marr, and on Zoom we'll hear from Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips and Kelly Grace Price.
Someone can begin. Go ahead.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you for allowing me to testify this morning. My name is Ashley Conrad. I am a community organizer with Freedom Agenda and the aunt to a 21-year-old who has been sitting on Rikers Island for the past 2 years. During this time, my family and I have attended over a dozen court hearings that are often disappointing and come with many layers of dysfunction, stemming from both the Department of Corrections and the courts, particularly Queens. These failures of both Department of Corrections and the court system have a profound impact not only on my nephew's case by prolonging it, but also on the lives of low-income families like my own who are forced to bear the burden of waiting in court all day, often with no resolution or progress. For my nephew, coming to court means waking up as early as 5 a.m. with the expectation of being chained for the entire day. After getting something that barely passes for breakfast on Rikers, he must wait all day in a cell at the courthouse without knowing when he can use the bathroom or have anything to eat and drink, and he doesn't get back into the island until the evening. This takes an immense toll on my nephew, who is autistic. His mental state is already compromised because of the state of violence he lives in, and preparing for court appearances brings so much stress and anxiety. Days at court are a constant letdown, when instead of getting progress and resolution, he continues to get reminders that this system sees his time as worthless and his life as disposable. And that's on the days that DOC does get him to court. At one court appearance that my family attended, they could not find my nephew in the building. Finally, we figured out where he was. He was still on Rikers Island because we got a call from him while sitting in the courthouse. His case was then adjourned for more weeks, another 3 weeks. This has been the process over and over again, stretching on for more than 2 years now. Thousands of families are suffering through this along with their loved ones. My family and I have taken days off from work, had to find childcare multiple times, hoping that something will come from the day, and yet nothing happens. We have even got to the point where sometimes we just hope and it'll be an additional opportunity to see my nephew, even if just for a moment, something my nephew looks forward to as well, and we often do not. They leave him downstairs in a cell as they make decisions about his life, disregarding the efforts it took to be in the building. On one occasion, a judge even had to send out an email blast to the entire courthouse trying to find my nephew's paperwork, which they did not find. And this resulted in him not being produced and in a court case being adjourned for another 3 or 4 weeks. These shortcomings demonstrate systemic flaws that need to be addressed. It is crucial for the Department of Corrections and the court system to prioritize timely and efficient court production, providing individuals with the opportunity to have their cases heard without undue delays. This requires improved communication, coordination, and accountability. And by doing so, we can work towards a system that respects the rights of individuals and upholds the principles of fairness and timeliness, and minimizes the undue burden placed on incarcerated individuals and their families who are already facing significant challenges. The entire justification for my nephew to be held in a jail where he has not even been convicted is to ensure he makes his court dates. But the Department of Corrections is so often failing to produce him, and when he is there, the courts operate with a level of unprofessionalism that further undermines their authority. On top of the incredible risk of harm that my nephew and everyone else who's sitting on Rikers Island is subjected to every day, the rampant issues with our court productions are another reason judges should be releasing more people to spare them from the brutality of Rikers and give them a real chance at due process. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eileen Marr. I'm a civil rights union leader from Vocal, New York, a social worker, and a survivor of New York State and New York City DOC, which includes over 420 days on Rikers. DOC counsel testified today that the very minimal amount of detainees not making court dates are a result of the detainee refusing. I call bull. As a detainee and as a directly impacted family member, I have seen via firsthand knowledge and experience that DOC staff will resort to using unprovoked physical violence in order to produce a detainee for court. We were repeatedly told that if any detainee refuses, the department would be sanctioned and fined as long as there is staff. The transportation COs have one job and one job only, to drive the detainees to and from court. However, if they aren't there, then they cannot do their job. So like the COs on the island and the boat, if they are purposely staging mass call-outs, sick-outs, no call, no shows, that equals less or sometimes no transportation COs available. That means missed court dates. Unless DOC provides uncoerced video evidence that a detainee does not or is refusing court, I call bull on that as well. For decades, if not a century, New York City DOC has relished the undeniable fact that they have been able to use unprovoked force and abuse against detainees. Then rather than own up to this or the officers abusing, sexually abusing, medically abusing, verbally abusing, and trafficking in fentanyl-saturated narcotics into the facilities and using solitary confinement that, despite it being illegal, they double down and, despite verifiable and tangible proof, deny any problems, which leads me and all of my comrades in this fight to end mass incarceration to believe that DOC is again waxing those same false tales when it comes to failed court dates. We have no reason to believe anything they report. And that little song and dance that the DOC council just did as far as using soft force, if cracking someone's skull, repeatedly kicking them, body slamming, and/or using pepper spray are soft force, then what is strong force? If refusing to give a detainee his or her methadone before court, or just to watch that person become physically ill for entertainment's purpose, are part of the CO's job when they bother to show up for work, but our appropriate job practices, please correct me. But we all know that that's not the case. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today and for holding this hearing on this critically important topic. My name is Tanya Krupat. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at the Osborne Center for Justice Across Generations. The topic of today's hearing is an area of concern for us at Osborne, as everyone here today. We had actually begun tracking the problems arising with DOC, bringing people to their court dates, as we were hearing more and more concerning experiences and growing frustration among those in DOC custody. It goes without saying that transporting people to court is critically important for so many reasons, including moving court cases along and ensuring people spend the least amount of time possible pre-trial and on Rikers. There are now approximately 5,411 people awaiting trial on Rikers. More than 1,200 have been there for 1 year, and 488 of these people have been there for more than 2 years. The Federal Monitor's report this past Friday highlighted the dangerous and deadly nature of Rikers. In addition to moving expeditiously to close Rikers, we also need to ensure that people are there for as short as time as possible. And the issue today is not only getting people to court, but as has been said, making sure they see a judge once in court, and also really closely examining what people are experiencing during this whole process. And I'd like to highlight some challenges and worrisome, even dangerous situations that we've become aware of. Refusals has been talked about a lot today, and according to one of our staff, what I see most often are refusals where a court officer will tell the judge the person refused to come, say there's a video of the refusal, and no video ever surfaces. The client often has no idea someone came to get them at all. Sometimes they just asked to go to the bathroom or change first and planned on coming. This can then prejudice the judge and DA to hear that the person is refusing, especially when DOC says they have it on video. The issue of people refusing should be unpacked, and each refusal should have documentation that indeed the individual chose not to go to court. Also, health and mental health issues should be related, as people sometimes don't want to go because in their prior court transportation, they weren't given adequate medication or food, with sometimes dire consequences. For example, for people with diabetes or on medically assisted treatment, going to court can prove dangerous or painful. Our staff described how people will intentionally take less insulin in the morning before court because they don't know if or when they will be fed at all, and they have no access to their insulin while in court custody. In addition to coordination between DOC and CHS being critical, there's a need for better systems to ensure the correct person is brought to court and they are not transported with or at all exposed to their co-defendants, which can be dangerous and also influence the outcome of their court hearing or case. One of our staff recounted DOC bringing the wrong person who shared the same name to court twice. The process can also be triggering for people with trauma histories, which is most people on Rikers. People are in hand restraints and leg chains on the bus, sometimes for hours. The conditions of the buses and pens can be difficult for anyone. We just want to finally highlight, our staff shared several instances where people were influenced to take pleas they did not want to take. One woman had not been able to have her psychiatric meds before court, and although she wanted to go to trial with her case without being stable on medication, she took a plea. Just want to highlight, as you have mentioned, Chair Brewer, these are solvable issues and require interagency coordination, among other things. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zachary Katz-Nelson. I'm the Executive Director of the Littman Commission. Thank you, Chair Brewer. Thank you, Chair Rivera, for holding this hearing, for the chance to testify. I think it's pretty clear that, first of all, the data that we're getting from a variety, it's very difficult to discern what's actually happening inside the Department of Correction, inside the courthouse. Obviously, getting someone on a bus to Rikers, the job's not done there. Getting them to the courthouse, the job's not done there. Are they actually getting in front of a judge? That's the critical question. And the Department of Correction wasn't able to answer that today, whether that actually happens. And so I think legislation like you proposed is critical. I think the oversight of staff, by council staff actually going and seeing, having the Board of Correction able to go and see, that matters tremendously. First of all, the Department of Correction changes how they operate when people are watching, but also it really helps people understand what's really happening behind the scenes. So it's essential. So as much as that can happen, please continue the work forward. Computerization, the department still relies on paper so much for this process. That should not be happening at this stage. The council, for instance, perhaps could mandate a date by which they have to computerize this system. And then think about the population review legislation that just passed recently. That is looking at an issue that needs to be solved, pulling all the players together to do it. What if something could be done similar for court production? Get the people and the right people in the room, as we've been talking about today. It is, as Sonia was saying, as you've said, Chair Brewer, this is solvable, right? But the right people have to be in the room to do it. And I think progress has been made in incremental fits and starts over the years, but not in the way that is necessary. And I think the food issue, for instance, is essential. I mean, for years, that's been a problem. Years and years and years of people not getting adequate food throughout what can be an incredibly long, long, long day, right? And that leads to all kinds of trouble in all kinds of ways. I think I just want to note a few stats. One is, it was mentioned earlier, the average time between court dates was last time we got the data from the courts was 57 days. 57 days between people's court appearances on average. So if you miss a court date, you may not be getting back before a judge for months. That is essential, and that obviously artificially inflates the population at Rikers. And the pace of cases in New York City, the average person on trial, waiting for a trial at Rikers, has been waiting there for 273 days. For a person with mental illness, it's 330 days and counting for both those groups of people. If we can bring that number down to even 180 days, 6 months, which is still an incredibly long period of time, but that's the state's goal for all felony cases. They should be done within 180 days. If New York City catches up with what the rest of New York State is doing, we would have 1,400 fewer people in jail today. That's a quarter of the population almost. And that's just about ensuring that there actually is such thing as a speedy trial in our city. So we have incredible room for progress and really look forward to working together to try and make sure we can make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to our friends that are on Zoom. We're going to hear from Darren Mack, Kelly Grace Price, and Dr. V.
Time starts now.
Thank you so much. My name is Darren Mack. I'm a co-director at Freedom Agenda and a member of the Jails Action Coalition. I'm also a survivor of Rikers Island. Thank you, Chair Rivera and Chair Brewer and committee members. I just want to thank the Council Member Rivera and Council Member Brewer for introducing this legislation to improve the transparency around this issue. This is a necessary step. We have seen that DOC will not provide any accurate information on their own, and it is to deliver on every one of their basic responsibilities. That includes getting people to court and also keep people in their custody alive and safe. And I want to thank the DOC Deputy Commissioner who testified today, because I sense that he genuinely wants to resolve these issues. I want to just share my experience with being transported to court. And this was decades ago when the population was over 20,000 people detained there. waking up at 4 a.m., being shackled, strip frisked, shackled, to handcuffed and shackled to my waist, and then, a leg shackled to another person, 6 a.m. and moving on the bus, to the city. And sometimes, unfortunately, there was times when I was told that I had a court date and then would be in court all day going through this arduous process and not see anyone. And then there was times when I knew that I had a court date but wasn't produced. And to see like decades later, this is still a problem is unacceptable. There was a lot of things that was said today. We know there's a lot of issues, and I'm definitely looking forward for all parties to like come together and work on these issues. Perhaps bringing in retired judges, to take on cases. Opening up more spaces for hearings. Expanding the virtual courts. But definitely, like city officials need to really utilize the supervised release more. Mental health courts is not being utilized enough, and I think that's something that need to be a sense of urgency from the most vulnerable people who are detained, within the New York City jail system, because there's no reason why a person with mental health issues and serious, diagnosis should be incarcerated in the first place. And then I just appreciate, city council members and this committee to taking action, because it's drastic and people are suffering, and too many lives have already been lost. So thank you, and thank you so much for this legislation that we support.
Next, we'll hear from Kelly Grace Price.
Time starts now.
We'll go back to Kelly Grace Price. We'll turn to Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips.
Time starts now.
Can you hear me now? Okay, peace and blessings, everyone. Chairs Rivera and Brewer, I'm happy to see you all. I'm Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips. Everyone calls me Dr. V, and as a decade-long active Jail Action Coalition member who wears many professional hats, I'm fully aware of the failures and deadly sins of New York City Department of Correction. I have gone on the record multiple times over the past decade, consistently reporting incidents where I have personally observed DOC uniform staff abusing my community members and their various rights on domestic soil. New York City must close Rikers Island now. With over 51% of DOC population having a mental health concern, New York must recognize the public health crisis and pass treatment, not jail, statewide. Chairs, thank you for this bill and this hearing. Accountability and transparency is at an all-time low. My community now has lead representation in the commissioner and mayor's office, yet a historic stain of the most deaths in custody. I get daily calls from individuals and sometimes from entire housing units wanting to speak their truth or have me reach out to their families or attorneys regarding a form of injustice or lack of minimum standards received. I must also note that not all calls come from the detained. Over the past 2 decades with various positions, I have built a solid rapport with staff across all areas as well. Previously, I've testified to observing someone inform an officer, no one came to get him from court, and she said, "Oh well," then walked down the corridor laughing with a fellow male officer about the detained male whining. I have also testified on the record of individuals having medical mobility concerns or in need of transporting devices such as medical support pillows or wheelchairs. One individual I had called BOC and 311 almost every week for follow-up care after surgery. They became ill, and even transportation was almost non-existent to get them to the ER. Another wasn't taken to court for months. I also had them call BOC and 311. Then I actually questioned the then BOC chair why in 5 months of me testifying on the record regarding this one case, no one had taken time to follow up. Why not one person seemed concerned that the motions he attempted to mail were returned only because they weren't sent certified mail. He didn't have any money on his books. DOC would not send it out for him, and he had no way to contact his lawyer. And he was not seeing anyone because he was not being produced to court. I say this because I've also put on the record how someone was removed from Rikers because they kept having other people call me because of the injustices being done, and their punishment was to be transferred to the boat. When I followed up on why they weren't going to court or going to medical appointments, the excuse I was given was it had rained on the boat and the elevators were out. Several times myself or colleagues at the Mental Health Project Urban Justice Center have had to take it further and reach out to higher ups for immediate assistance and care. In my previous testimonies, I have mentioned that many times people go without food and medications all day.
Time
And many
expired.
go without access to water. Give me 1 second. Without access to water, not only in their housing unit, but during the late spring and summer months, but also en route to and from court. And I'll just skip past and say, I just want to lastly say, where's our moral compass? Where's the justice that our soldiers served under the for the illusion for? And I say that because DOC Commissioner and I personally discussed using video to record referrals in spring of 2022. And I actually begged advocates to give him a fair chance last year and not judge him due to his political and personal connection to our mayor.
Can you
Yet it
wrap
didn't
up?
take long for me- Huh?
Can you wrap up? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Yet
you.
it didn't take long for me to realize my own actions. And I say that because there's a few things, but he didn't want wardens to speak to me anymore. And I just want to lastly, I just want to say that I don't think it's wise for us to assume the commissioner will act in good faith. And I mention that because I've asked repeatedly, and DOC has gotten money for budget, money for more officers when they was working 3 shifts, and money for programming and DOI expansion. And they failed at moving forward with all of those areas after receiving funding. It's not a pandemic concern, it's a failure in leadership.
Thank
Peace
you
and
very
blessings.
much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And she's so-
We'll return to Kelly Grace Price.
Time starts now.
Hi, it's Kelly Grace Price from Close Rosie's. I'm sorry I don't have a great internet connection, so I'll keep it quick. I appreciate the council always listens to the data that I present, and of course I'll present written testimony with data. I want to focus on what DOC General Counsel Schechtman said today about the number of vehicles available to the DOC. I didn't know that they literally only had 21 vehicles in play to move people to courthouses. I can't believe that he gave us that data so handily, but please ask him how many of those 12 20-seat buses, the 1 18-seat bus, 3 wheelchair buses, and 5 court vans are actually in operational condition currently. From 2012 to 2021, the DOC settled almost $11 million in transportation litigation lawsuits from people on visitor buses within the jails on Rikers Island suing for transportation incidences, and also for people in custody being transported to courthouses being injured on those buses. That's a lot of money if we only have a fleet of 21 vehicles. And if I count the number of people available to have their butts in those seats on those buses, it's literally only under 180 people a day. Do the math: 12 20-seat buses, 1 18-seat bus, 3 wheelchair buses. Look at the data. There's another reason we're not getting people to court. We don't have enough seats to move their butts. Sorry, I resisted the temptation to curse. I also want to talk about the number of staff. I think the city council is aware because I've sent it to Jeremy, and it was also published in a city and state column last week. I have a data chart of DOC staff members, the roster from the first day that Melina took office versus a roster that I had to pry out of the DOC records officer's hands from April of this year. And in early January, DOC had 278 uniformed officers in the transportation division, which is a lot of officers for 21 vehicles, but that's another story. And they had 34 civilian people in the transportation division. And as of April this year, they're down 60 people, 65 people. So I don't believe Schechtman's response that they're adequately staffed. They're down to 248 uniformed and 8 civilian people in transportation. So there's a lot of things going on. I was really looking forward to hearing Sheckman's testimony because as a lawyer, I knew he was going to dribble out little excuses for the DOC not producing people. And of course, we did hear his dribbles and his dances. Please ask for video recordings of people that not only refuse when they leave the island, but also, as we learned today, apparently the alleged refusal when people reach the courthouse.
Time expired.
I'll just wrap up. We, under the PREA law, we're supposed to have cameras by now in every bus, so it shouldn't be hard. It's not just handheld, but we should be able to record those refusals. This business about the Sally Port, this is something to explore as well. Thank you. I won't take up more of your time, but I will turn in my testimony and my data. Kelly Grace Price from Close Rosie.
I just want to mention
Chair
that.
Brewer.
Thank you. I just want to mention that the unit of appropriation, which we will ask for, will address all of your concerns, buses, seats, staffing, et cetera. So thank you for bringing that up, but the unit of appropriation is what we need.
And we'll continue to ask on the record because, as we have learned through history, sometimes answers change, and that's unacceptable when there isn't consistency, when interagency accountability and collaboration is important. I want to recognize students from Ethical Culture Fieldson School who are working on a criminal justice project. Appreciate you all being here. I hope you enjoy your visit. And of course, Councilmember Stevens, she's the best. And I want to thank this panel. I want to thank you. Councilmember Williams actually has a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you all, as you can imagine, like we heard this testimony from DOC, and we're like, you're on the record. You got to be telling the truth. And then we hear different testimonies, and it really just seems like things are in contrast and maybe flat out like lies almost. And we asked about the meals thing, and he said they get a meal. They get meals if they want meals, and then you testify and say they're not getting meals. And so is there anything specifically where you would say like that's not accurate that they said? Do you like have specific things that you can point to that say like that's not accurate? Because you have your own, I always say that people with lived experience is also experience. We can't just look at data. Like if you were experiencing something, your experience is just as valid as a piece of data that says something did or did not happen. And so like from your lived experience, like how like genuinely do you feel about the testimony after hearing that testimony? And anyone can answer.
I'll go quickly. There's nothing specific to his testimony just because as a family member, I can't, travel with my nephew or be downstairs with him, so I can't speak to specifics. What I will say is I do believe there is a time where food is given, but I think it's at like the very beginning of their day. I'm assuming it's those sandwiches. And just talking about my nephew in particular who is autistic, and talking about different people with mental health issues. Like, for example, my nephew, textures, certain clothing, like things irritate him or overstimulate him. So just like a general sandwich, he may not eat that. And I'm sure that may be the case for many people. So in that regard, I don't think food is being given to them, or I would confidently say until they get back on Rikers Island, which is maybe 5, 6 o'clock in the evening when court adjourns. One thing, though, too, that I did want to address, which is maybe not disputing what he said, but maybe just giving a little more clarification on why, in my opinion, it happens, is when he talked about, like, people missing court, but also the correlation between slashings that they're having as well. In my opinion, that's the result of the system we have, people languishing on Rikers for so long in such a violent environment. That kind of outcome becomes inevitable. And it does accumulate people who are on Rikers who have multiple charges, even though they are just still trying to overcome the first charge that they got when arriving to Rikers. So I hope that answered something. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, and before anyone else answers, and a question for you, you said that something should be computerized. If you could just say again what you felt should be computerized.
Sure. So a lot of the system, DOC operates on these paper slips that follow people as they go through the court production process with their name and information on it. And there is some elements that are computerized, but many of it is just the paper that follows somebody physically throughout the system. And those papers get lost. Sometimes they get mixed up. Sometimes they don't get entered in a computer properly when someone arrives at court. There are lots of different pieces to this where inside the court production process itself, it's paper-based still. And it feels like the way, like how to track somebody, the fact that people tend to get lost, so to speak, in the system, in the courthouse, that DOC is not sure even if the person is there or if they're still at Rikers or if they're on the bus. A lot of that is because the system is still paper-based. And so it feels like that can be solved.
The dashboard system is supposed to address that, but it's not expansive, right?
Well, the dashboard is also only as good as what gets entered into it, unfortunately. And a lot of that is based on the paper.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
When I was on the island, I was the quote-unquote feeder for my unit. So they would drop off the breakfast at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would get everybody up, or the officer was supposed to get everybody up by 4:30 so they could eat. But sometimes in the middle of breakfast, the officer would come to get people so they wouldn't be able to finish their breakfast. Inside of that time, they not only have to eat, but they have to shower, they have to get everything together, get paperwork together if they're bringing anything. And it's, you know, sometimes you just can't get absolutely everything done. The other thing was that I wanted to mention was that I hated going to court. Absolutely hated it, not only because of the time you had to wake up in the morning, but because you were shoved into what would be a one-person cell, but there would be 3 or 4 people in there. Putting aside the food issues, there were times we were finished, everyone was finished. Say, I was in Manhattan, we were finished with court by like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We weren't taken back to the island until after 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. One time, it was 2 o'clock in the morning when we got back. And we were just sitting around most of that time. But regardless of all of that, there was always that glimmer of hope that you could go home when you went to court. So if I could have walked there barefoot in the wintertime, I would have if it meant going home. So I have a hard time believing that people are just refusing for just because it's a random Tuesday. I just don't believe that at all. If there's even the little iota of chance that you could go home, someone's going to grab it. Thank you.
If I could just add, I would just say it was maybe more what he didn't say and the fact that he didn't address the very short testimony and the whole, you know, he only talked about getting people to the building, not getting to people in front of the judge, as has been talked about, and then the experience, the whole human side of it. I mean, most people have health issues. Over 50% have mental health issues. There's over 800 people awaiting trial who are older. So there's one bologna sandwich, as I'm told, you know, at whatever hour you get it, that's it. You don't have access to water, you might get a little juice. So, and sometimes you can't eat that. So there's just no attention to the details. That is what is being human. Never meant also there's like co-defendants, we've been told numerous times, people who are not supposed to be are on the same bus threatening people. You know, there's so many safety issues. So this is again why digitizing, this is so solvable in this digital age. You should have lists of people who shouldn't be mixing, they shouldn't be on the same bus. There's so much that actually should have gone into this that it was disappointing not to hear about. Thank you.
We want to thank you for your testimony and to say that this is not only fixable, we will fix it. And we appreciate everyone here who has made the time to give us the suggestions as to how to do that. Thank you very much. Do you want to add anything?
Yes, thanks to everybody that was here with us. And with the majority of people on Rikers pretrial, DOC's existence is premised on their ability to produce individuals to court. We know that will reduce the population. So thank you for your testimony. We will follow up with legislative action and take your suggestions to make the bill strong. And with that, we adjourn this hearing.